So my name is Rob Reed, and I'm the program manager for the Databricks University Alliance. And the goal of my job at the company is to help academics get access to resource teach using the Databricks notebook. And I generally parse that out into data science notebook running on public cloud resources. And the reason, in my experience, it's been valuable is because it abstracts away some layers, excuse me, abstracts away some layers of technology so that the teaching experience is a little easier. You can focus more on the cognition versus the building of the tech stack. And for the last 3 years, over the last 3 years, we've added about 600 universities across the globe to the University Alliance. Most of them, when they teach, use something called Databricks Community Edition, which is a fantastic forever free resource, which also means it's subject to the overgrazing of the commons. At times it's too slow, it's not the full functionality of Databricks, and it can actually degrade to the point where it's a negative in the teaching and learning experience. So one of the gifts of this job is running into my colleagues at Vocareum, because together with Vocareum, we can deliver a teaching and learning experience that is much more streamlined and also gives faculty and students access to sort of the full Databricks stack, including, like we talked about in the prior session, some GPU usage. So in terms of the mission of my job and my role in providing a tech stack for teaching and learning using data science notebooks that can scale, this is a fantastic partnership. And I want to turn it now over to David to talk about what does that look like. And David, take it away.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Rob. Really excited to be here. We have been engaged with Rob and different teams over in Databricks over the last few months, putting together the integration to Databricks and then also putting together a program that can, as Rob was saying, make it easier for you guys to deliver learning experiences that are seamless and not, limited to community edition, right? So being able to get full access to many of the features of Databricks. So I guess folks are able to speak. If you'd like, feel free to chime in and ask some questions. There's also the chat and QA features, so feel free to use those as well. So let me start sharing a screen here, and we'll kick into a slideshow. So I think you have the slides already, so feel free to follow along and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, and so basically, in terms of who we are, Vocareum is a platform provider, and our purpose is really to deliver secure, scalable, budget-friendly digital labs for learning of AI, cloud, and data skills, right? And so many of you may have already been exposed to us and maybe not know that. A bunch of the folks that we've talked to in the last few weeks, coming from us through this Databricks University Alliance, have already used us as part of, for example, the AWS Academy or AWS Educate, in which we are the provider for the labs. So whenever you're using some content from AWS Academy Cloud Foundations, for example, the hands-on lab portion is served by Vocareum. So through that partnership, we're serving about 4.5 million AWS accounts to hundreds of thousands of AWS Academy learners. And of course, we're linked into any number of LMSs as well through LTI. So whatever tools or technologies that you need to teach and to manage your class, we can link it. And very happy to be working with Udacity and Udemy as well, and then now Databricks. And actually, last week, Databricks had just launched a LLM course on edX, and with Vocareum as the lab platform. So there's a series of, I think, 5 labs that are automated and integrated into edX for use of Databricks DALI in a hands-on environment. In terms of academic partners, through our partnerships with AWS especially and others, we are currently serving about 6,000 institutions today, and using Vocareum in some manner. In terms of the learners on the platform, just about 2.4 million learners on the platform, and 100,000, 125,000 labs are started each day. In terms of our labs, they're fully managed labs specifically for hands-on skills training. And so basically being able to provide all the tools and packages, provisioning and safeguards, identity, access controls, and then also being able to persist student work, right? And so when the student comes in and does their work, they can come back to the lab and continue the work. Being able to deliver data sets, files, databases, and then also providing you as an instructor with access to student work areas to be able to provide feedback to learners, and then also even form teams and provide peer reviews. So we kind of see our job as a managed lab provider, specifically for education purposes, right? So specifically built so that the learner sort of experience is streamlined. It may be a little more complex for you, but I think we're trying to make that as streamlined as possible as well, so that that you can get onto the job of teaching and assessing rather than setting up, as Lloyd is saying, or as Rob was saying, setting up the tech stack. In terms of the managed Databricks labs, basically the way our labs work is very similar to, for example, in AWS Academy. Learners are provided with direct SSO access to a fully managed Databricks user account. Okay, they don't have to go and sign up for their own community account. When learners come in through their LMS or through Vocareum directly, we will provision and set up a Databricks account already, and it'll be a standard account. Okay, and they will just get assigned to those accounts. And if the student has access to multiple Databricks labs, then that basically means that they have access to multiple Databricks user accounts. Okay, and each learner's Databricks account is constrained, right? So that really to constrain the overspend, right? So we're not asking students to put in any credit cards or anything like that. So there is a constraint in terms of the time budget as an instructor. In a general Vocareum lab, the instructor can set up all the different constraints in terms of time budget, how much time is allowed inside a lab, the policy, the types of services, and the instance types that are that can be launched, session length, how long an interactive session will last. Okay, additionally, Vocareum will allow you to bring your own accounts, Databricks and AWS. As part of this Databricks University Alliance, we're actually streamlining that process as well, so that the Databricks account would be delivered by Rob and Databricks, and then the AWS account will be backed by Vocareum. Okay, teachers have access to student work areas to provide feedback and assessment, so teachers can see which learners are active. They can jump into the learner environment and provide assistance, or they can go in out of band and see what the student has done, right? Without asking the student for credentials or asking the student to set up some sharing or anything like that. We can also leverage spot instances to reduce cost. There is tiered and managed billing at the org or course or learner levels. So you can see, across the organization how, how much time students are spending, or how much, how many resources are being spent, being spun up. And then the IDs could be pretty broad. So we can provide, just access to a Databricks environment. We can provide some terminal access that's Vocareum served. We can provide VS Code or provide, README content. So, there's a lot of different, a lot of flexibility there. And then, as I mentioned earlier, LMS, learning management systems. We have very, very rich sort of integrations with all the popular learning management systems. And pretty seamless. And then REST APIs, if necessary, you can manage things through REST as well. I see there's something in chat. Is there a question? Oh no. Okay. Moving on to the next slide here. In terms of the University Alliance, we are working with Rob to kind of put together a really streamlined experience for you, and based on pilots in the last last quarter, last semesters, we have kind of come up with two different options that we expect to cover 90% of all the scenarios that are out there without requiring an unlimited sort of cloud costs, right? So part of the problem with these cloud-based services could be when a learner comes in and they exceed the spend, and then all of a sudden you're left with a $2,000 bill or something like that, right? Being able to kind of put together constraints around some of these scenarios gives you a fixed predictability in terms of the spend for, or the resources required for a course. So basically what we're saying is 1 lab per user. Rob is generously covering all the DBU credits. And then there's some fixed time on either CPU or GPU per course. And on a per user or per learner basis, it would be $60 per user per course. Yep.
Oh, I was just going to say a little bit of background on that. I was just running some numbers in my head. We've probably run over the last 3 years 100 different courses, and the 95% is a pretty strong confidence interval. If you look at this slide where you've got 160 hours, if you divide that over a 16-week period, that's about 10 hours per week. I'm really, really delighted with being able to offer this through Vocareum and have it be about the cost of a textbook for a student. And in addition, if you want access to those public cloud resources and GPU clusters, larger clusters, to be able to do this and have it be as a single billing option through Vocareum, you get rid of dealing with Databricks in terms of billing or making sure you're not getting charged for DBUs. I know too long we had some issues with getting an invoice and we're like, where'd that come from? And also just seamless connection to AWS on the back end. There is a little bit of setup in terms of getting your course set up. Once that's done, it really makes things, everything easier down the road, and you get to spend more time on the actual classwork versus building the tech stack. So I really appreciate the time and effort that all of the faculty have put in terms of helping us rough this out, and Vocareum in terms of setting up this this resource to make it easier just to okay, let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. And based on the feedback, we're seeing that there's two options that are important for the community. One which is CPU cluster, and as Rob was saying, we're delivering 160 hours of an i3x large, right? Which should serve serve majority of the requirements there. And then option 2, the difference is now we're offering GPU as well. So there's 40 hours of this G5 2x large.
And note also, and I think part of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, David, it's the Vocareum interface allows you to get alerts as a faculty member if you're like blowing through things too fast, or if some of your students are going overboard, and that you don't have to log into your AWS console and set the budgeting, limits up and check that console. And, it simplifies things to the point where you can say, okay, here are our guardrails. And if we get close, then I will be notified. It'll be a push request as opposed to me as the instructor having to go in and check everything on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
I can thank the Berkeley Master's Program for hitting those guardrails clearly on a repeated basis. So again, we're leveraging the experience of the community here. I'm delighted.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. And also, if you need to give specific students a little bit extra time, that's possible as well, right? So it's all within the Vocareum interface. You don't ever have to go to AWS to do so, right? Here's a case study of Lloyd over at University of Rochester, and I think he's on here as well. But I think when we started the process and the pilot with Lloyd, he was telling us that it was just way too time consuming to set up and manage the Databricks workspaces clusters, working with the AWS and setting those up as well. And so just way too much administration, right? And so when we kicked it off, there was a course with 65 students, grouped into 13 teams, and they needed access to i3 X-large clusters. And then of course, teacher access to the user work areas and integration to Blackboard. And I think it was pretty successful. I think with some feedback from Lloyd, we're able to set up the infrastructure pretty quickly, and then the spend, as Rob was saying, was totally in line, right? Which is Rob was handling the Databricks Academy or University Alliance credits, and then there was about $2,000 of AWS spend.
And just a shout out to Vocareum for working with Lloyd to set up the ability to group students into teams and to work out cluster sharing, because I think a lot of these courses, students will be working in teams, and that's one of the advantages of working in a data science notebook is you can collaborate on one notebook across teams. That took some extra work on Vocareum's part, and I think it made Lloyd's job a lot easier to have that sort of team-based setup and access.
And in just terms of pricing, we have standard pricing for Vocareum, but with the Databricks University Alliance, we have streamlined things and reduce the cost as well, and basically providing these fixed configurations, so there's no need to do any scripting or any sort of other setup is pretty important. And then all the DBU and AWS fees are included, whereas with our standard pricing, we do ask our customers to come in with their own AWS and Databricks accounts, and then we would be managing it on their behalf, and then they would be responsible for managing the spend and administration of those. So this is pretty exciting to be able to deliver this to all of you. From here, I'd like to switch over to a demo, and then we can also discuss next steps. Before we do so, any questions? Okay, great.
Oh, somebody's got their hand up. Let's see, Scott.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it worked when I raised my hand there, but It looks very interesting. I was glad to hear you said they can do teams. One thing I had a question on is I noticed on the slide it said the idle timer is 15 minutes and then the labs are 120 minutes. And so what I was wondering is I tended to do student projects where there are some components that are in class that they're doing a lab that, I mean, it wouldn't even have to be that long, but that they're doing very set steps to learn something. But then they're doing a student project where they have to work on it and it's over sort of the semester. Can you set that up as a lab, or how would that work?
Yeah, so you can set up one course, one lab to cover the whole semester, or we could set up a series of labs. And maybe one lab could be a very, very short one. And maybe your final project is a longer lab, right? And the session timer is really for the interactive access, and the students can always end that session earlier. And so basically that's there to kind of protect against if the student goes and walks away for a while, right? And so there's the idle timer, and then there's also this session timer here. Okay. But those could be extended as well. It could be, those could be adjusted. The overall sort of time budget is probably the most important, right? Which will really talk to the cost of the lab.
Okay. One other question then for the idle timer, like after 15 minutes idle time, it times out. Would they have to restart a cluster if
Yep.
after that then?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay. So what's on the screen right now is a Canvas environment, right? And if you look in this Canvas environment, we've got some assignments and we've got some labs. In this lab section, we've got a Databricks University Alliance lab. And so what I'll do is I'll switch over to a student view here and just kind of demonstrate the student experience. So they can just click into the Databricks University Alliance lab, and what you'll see is Vocareum spinning up the environment, right? So we've essentially, let me do a reload here. So what we've done is assigned a Databricks user to the learner, and then we've launched the Databricks workspace, and so they are essentially SSO straight into Databricks here. Okay, so there's no need for anyone to go and log into Databricks separately. It's essentially iframed inside a Canvas environment, right? So it's actually a double iframe, right? So we've got Vocareum lab iframed into Databricks through LTI, and then Databricks iframed into Vocareum through SSO. Okay, and so of course, if you need a little more real estate, you can expand and use full screen there. Okay, and from here, of course, here we've got some compute that's already been spun up, but it's not running. Okay, and so then the specifics of the instance are already predefined as we were talking about before, right? And so this is an I3X large. Okay, and as a student, the student can go to their workspace and bring up their work. When they're done, they can end the lab and come back, and they can continue their work, right? And so there's so this is a pretty straightforward environment. You'll see up here there's a Databricks with a green, which basically means okay, the lab is running, and here it tells you okay, I've used 1.7 hours out of 160 total hours. My session, this interactive session is counting down from two hours, and so as it gets closer, the student can decide if they want to continue to work, or they can end the lab, they can restart the lab and whatnot, right, and just continue where they were. If you need to, we also have this Databricks details, so you can actually launch Databricks into a new tab, right? And so then that's, not iframed anywhere. This is just purely straight to a Databricks environment. Okay, so that's the student experience. So it's very, very simple, streamlined. There's not really anything for them to do other than, their work within Databricks and just watching their time. Okay, and as an instructor, let's switch over to this tab here. This is the instructor view of the world, right? And we've got a Databricks Alliance lab here, and the settings for this. So we've got team projects, so we can configure this to be a team project, right? And we can set up some team assignments. Within this section, we are actually defining the characteristics of that lab, and so this will be preset for you depending on your selection. Is it a GPU lab or a CPU lab? Okay, and then as an instructor, if I go to the class view, then I can see all the students that are in my class, right? And you'll see here, there's when I went into the student view, there was a test student, right? And when I click on the test student, then I can actually see, how they're doing with relative to the budget, what sort of activity they've performed, and then actually go visit their work area as well. And then this is essentially a class view, right? So you can see which other students are inside that class. And if they're showing green, that means they're actively inside that lab. Gray, they have not visited yet. Red, they have ended the lab and they're not currently present. So yeah, so that's pretty much the learner experience, the student, the instructor experience. For the most part, the configuration of the labs is fully covered by Vocareum, and so it's more of an administration detail for the instructors. And then, of course, if you want to integrate it into your learning management system, we can help you with that as well. So, for example, if I wanted to integrate this into Canvas, there's a little LTI link here that we would drop into Canvas or into Blackboard or whatever. So yeah, that's the demo, and I guess next steps, basically, if you haven't already joined the Databricks University Alliance, work with Rob, and then get started with Vocareum. Reach out to sales, and of course, any questions we can discuss here, or you can send some emails. Any thoughts?
Yeah, happy to answer any questions on implementation or connecting you with other faculty members. I think we've got 7 or 8 faculty members in attendance, and I think I know most of you.
Rob, Su Hong has her hand up.
Oh, Su Hong, please. She's had to suffer through me for more than 1 hour today, so I apologize.
So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so very informative introduction. So I have 2 questions. First one is where the data reside when we use this lab. So how we can how we load the data, upload in the lab. Can we link to the AWS account, or we just directly use the Databricks interface to upload the data?
Yeah, you just use the Databricks interface. We're completely abstracting the AWS environment.
So what if I have a big data set? It's going to be very slow. Use Databricks interface to load. I have experience. I believe that interface has a limitation. If you have your data set is more than 1 gigabyte, I think it's impossible if you have a big data set. So my follow-up question is because in the course I teach, students work with a real-world company project. So we have a kind of a big data set. So I look at your configuration. You only have 1 worker, right? It's not a cluster. So this is just for learning purpose.
Correct.
We do not be able to expand to say if I need 5 nodes that work, we will not be able to do that.
We could obviously we can adjust based on the requirements as well.
Okay, thank you. But is this going to increase the price, right?
It depends. If you require larger clusters and more time, yes, because the underlying AWS cost will go up as well.
Okay, thank you.
Just to interject, I had one question to follow up on that. It works the same as Databricks would regularly, right?
Correct. Yeah. So this
because right now I have students using a data set. It might not be as large as the data set she was talking about, but it's about, I think about 5 gigabytes or something, all zipped up as bzip2s. And I just use code to bring it into the local Databricks machine and then transfer that over to the Databricks file system. So that would work the same, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, that's always an alternative if you have a large data set, as opposed to using the GUI interface.
Right.
Oh,
And
one other thing to interject there. Where are you locating these? Do you know, or as far as data centers?
US West 2 is where.
Okay, Oregon.
Yep.
Okay, same as Databricks. Okay, yeah, because I load my data there. I put it in an S3 bucket of my own, and then just have students pull it in from there, and it's super quick.
And we have a written question here, David, from Bernard. So the question is, do you have a lab solution for an end-to-end implementation? Data ingestion, transformation, storage, and visualization. This lab would be for a DevSecOps implementation.
So end-to-end, we may or may not, depending on which tool sets that you are looking for, we could potentially stitch something together, or if you can use an end-to-end within Databricks, then that would be ideal.
Yeah, and sorry, I should have stepped in as well. Yeah, one of the key features of the Databricks notebook as a data science notebook is handling everything from ingestion to Spark processing, ETL. The storage is handled via the AWS backend, and then Databricks and Suhong can weigh in on this. The visualization gets better and better. So once you're in that iframe inside of Databricks, you can do everything that you mentioned in your Q&A. So yes, end to end within Databricks.
Yep.
Thanks for picking up on that, John. I was looking at the chat and I missed the actual Q&A, which is a good function for the Q&A. Let's see, any other questions? I know we've got Venu from Stevens Institute. Let us know if you have any questions. And I guess I don't know, are there data transfer issues since it's US West? If you're on the East Coast, like Suhong or Dr. Cohen?
There shouldn't be, other than, maybe it takes a little longer to load your initial data set up. But what I was doing with Databricks is I put it in an S3 bucket in Oregon, and then I set some bucket policies so that the only place that can access it is an EC2 instance in Oregon. So my data transfer cost is 0. And all I've got is the storage cost on a bucket, which is, maybe a few bucks for the semester or something.
And I don't think we ran into any issues with Lloyd, and I know Lloyd's on the East Coast as well. So I didn't hear any feedback from Lloyd saying it was onerous. So yeah.
Hey Rob, this is Benu from Stevens. Just to add to that, that's basically what I do as well. Today we use Community Edition. What I do is all the data sets that I'm going to use for the course, I upload them to our Stevens OneDrive and make that link accessible to all the students within the university. And we just use that link to download data. uploading, as Suhong was saying, is a pain if it's a large file. So being able to do that and put that in the public link is always helpful.
Great, thank you, Benu.
I am actually interested, and I'm starting to take more liking for Databricks and Vocareum because we've been using AWS Labs for a while. And students have a great deal of appreciation for how convenient and how user-friendly the community edition is. So I'm trying to get more and more of my lectures designed around using that tool. And I guess the next step in that direction is being able to scale out. So one of the questions earlier was about single node versus cluster. Coming in, I did not appreciate that right now the offerings are for single node. But David, you're suggesting that if there's a need, you could quickly make that adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And any questions on the Databricks side, feel free to reach out. rob.reed@databricks.com. I think most of y'all know me already. And yeah, again, it's just great to be able to partner with Vocareum to meet the needs, you know, of the folks on the call. I will get the content, the recording of the talk uploaded sometime later today. The slide deck is already linked in PDF form in the comments section of the meetup. Let me put the link to the meetup. I guess you're here, so you have it, but I'll put that there. Just for
And if I
easy
can
reference.
ask one more thing.
Oh yeah, please.
If there's any videos or resources on how to set up auto grading for assignment/labs, that'll be super helpful as well. I'm an adjunct. I have a 9 to 5, so it's hard for me to go through all the hurdles of onboarding a new tool, which is Vocareum in this case. But being able to kind of sell a comprehensive story on how it's going to save so much time for faculty, as I think is going to help me get the department to kind of sign off on the check. So if there's anything along those lines that I could peruse and share with my fellow faculty, that'll be helpful.
Okay, yeah, so we don't currently have videos specifically on auto grading in a Databricks lab, but let me see what we can whip up.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I think as we get critical mass of users, the ability to build auto grading functions within the Vocareum interface, I think that's we may tap you to be on a working committee, Venu, to just make sure we get this done. So that's on our to-do list because it's because of the integration with the LMSs. I think it just makes perfect sense. It just makes everybody's life easier.
One other question, if I could ask, is I thought on your slides you had something about resources for instructors. So I'm assuming like while the course is running, like I would have resources on it. Is there a possibility of buying, like it's $60 per student? Is it possible like a semester ahead of time to just for $60 sign up for an account to be able to play with it as an instructor before you go live the next semester?
Absolutely. That's part of the purpose is giving you a chance to kind of explore it, understand it before you deploy.
Did that answer your question, Scott?
Yeah, I think so. It sounded like I could sign up for an account for a semester beforehand, right? And just
Yep.
It'd be like the $60 or whatever, and then
Yep.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or observations from Vocareum? I think I'm all set from my end, but appreciate your time and attention.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
All right, take care.